between the age of 8 and 10. And he presumed that the poorer children would be dying and the wealthy children would be living. Imagine his surprise when the poorer children were living and the city children. The city children were the ones that were dying. And he investigated to find the common denominator. The common denominator, and it might surprise you, it was peanut butter. And every jar of peanut butter that he tested had aflatoxin in it. What's aflatoxin? Aflatoxin is a mold waste. And aflatoxin it has a direct effect on the liver. And that was the cause of the liver cancer. So how come the poorer children were living and the wealthy children were dying? The only difference was the diet. And in med school, he was taught you need meat for protein and you need milk for calcium. That's probably not much more do doctors learn on nutrition, unfortunately. And the children in the city were eating what Time magazine called the meat sweet diet. High meat, high dairy, high refined sugar, high refined grains. But the country children, they were eating a lot of vegetables, greens, some rice, a bit of soy, a little bit of fish, and they weren't dying of liver cancer. And so he did a lot of experiments. 20 rats, he injected every rat with aflatoxin. 10 rats, he gave 20% animal protein. The other 10 rats, 5% animal protein. What's 20% animal protein on human comparison? That would be meat and dairy every single meal. 5% animal protein would be maybe a little once a day. Now, rats live 2 years compared to humans living 70, 80 years. And rats' digestive tract, very similar to humans. In fact, the closest milk to human milk is rat milk, but we're not going to milk rats, are we? We'll stick with the goats. But that's why they do experiments on rats, because they live 2 years. So they can see in 2 years what would happen to a human in 70, 80 years. And what he found was the 10 rats on the 20% animal protein within 2 years were dead or dying of liver cancer. Remember, they'd all been injected with aflatoxin. What about the 5% who got the 5% protein? No liver cancer at all. Interesting. Do you know, on his deathbed, Louis Pasteur refuted his theory that germs cause disease. He says it's not the germ, it's the condition of the body. They were all injected with aflatoxin. You see, these moles, yes, they're opportunist organisms and they're only going to hang about where they're getting fed. That's why to starve the fungus, to starve the cancer, you starve it. What's its favourite food? Sugar and other yeasts. Remember what Dr. Holland said? You deprive cancer cells of glucose, they self-destruct. And yes, this slower pathway can wait for the glucose from the carrot, from the lentil, from the almond, from the vegetables. Back to Colin Campbell for a minute. He did another study where he did 20% vegetable protein, no cancer. So it was something in those animal products that was feeding it. How else can you starve the fungus or starve the cancer? Yes, low glucose. Also, check that there is no exposure to environmental poisons, because these opportunist organisms feed on yeast and funguses and waste. One lady told me that her house was always mouldy. Her bedroom was on the no sun side of the house. For you, that's north. For us, it's south, because we're down the bottom. So we'll just say no sun. And she said that her walk-in wardrobe was between the ensuite bathroom and her bedroom. So it was actually getting steam in there, and her shoes and her belts were always going mouldy. And when she came to us, she had a very large breast cancer. She's only 35, had 3 little children. See, where the children were sleeping, there was sun in that side of the house, and her husband was at work all day. She's at home, she's the cleaner. If you find any mold, don't wipe it. You'll disrupt it and you'll breathe it in. What do? There is a time for a mask. I don't know any other time. There is a time for a mask. I like seeing people's faces. Yeah. What you do is you put the mask on, cover yourself, get a spray bottle and put white vinegar in it and spray it and leave. Come back 10 minutes later, it'll all be dead, then you can wipe it. So when I say starve, you've got to see your exposure. Do you know, it was a very sad case that when this lady heard the lecture on the link between cancer and fungus, she was so sad. She rang up her husband. She said, I cannot go back to the house. Very sad. She sadly only lived a few more months. It was a very advanced case. But also with breast cancer, we find there's a hormone factor. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about hormones in detail. And the disruption in hormones is estrogen dominance and progesterone deficiency. Estrogen should be under progesterone. It should not be the high one. So what causes it to go high? The contraceptive pill, exposure to chemicals. It all contributes to boosting the estrogen. The Australian Health Department, the Australian Cancer Foundation have stated that estrogen is a known human carcinogen because estrogen is a cell proliferator, causes massive cell growth. And so any endocrine cancer, whether it be breast, whether it be uterine, whether it be ovarian, whether it be cervical, whether with a man it be prostate, the hormones must be balanced. Our body runs according to precision balance, and this balance in hormones is vital. You can apply a wild yam cream, and that wild yam cream contains a plant chemical called diosgenin. When it's applied to the skin, the fat cells take it up, and it boosts mother hormone, progesterone. And when you boost that hormone, that automatically brings that estrogen down. So you can see by what I'm talking about, different cancers might need slightly different things, but this is the foundation, no matter what type of cancer. Number 2, kill. I do think we've got to get away from the kill mentality, but there are herbs that will kill cancer, kill fungus, and will not kill you. Garlic is a good one. Another one is olive leaf extract. Another one is grapefruit seed extract. In my book, Self-Heal by Design, I list some of the herbs that can be taken to kill. Also, oregano oil, or you call it oregano, is that right? Just making sure you know what I'm talking about. It's very strong. So you start with 1 drop in a little water 3 times a day, and then you might build up after a few days to 2 drops. It's bad. A week ago, I had a sore throat, so I was taking oregano oil. Oh, it's bad. Put it down quickly, but it is very strong. So what you do with those herbs, you don't use all your ammunition at once. So you might do a week or 2 on the garlic. Then you might do a week or 2 in olive leaf extract. Then you might do a week or 2 on grapefruit seed extract. Have you ever eaten a grapefruit and bitten the seed? You'll think the grapefruit's sweet when you bite that seed. It's high in strong volatile oils, and they're strong antifungal, antiviral oils. And the oregano oil is a good one. So you see what we're doing there, starving it, we're killing it off. And number 3, bring back the balance. And how you can bring back the balance is a probiotic. So this morning we talked about the gut and the delicate balance in the microorganisms in the gut. I had one lady that come with cancer and she'd been on something like 1 year of non-stop antibiotics. An antibiotic is a mold waste. And what it does is it puts a mold into the body. So her gut flora needed to be boosted. And the probiotic is high in Lactobacillus acidophilus, bifidobacterium, and they're the starting point for all the other good bacteria. Also cultured foods, taking yogurts or kefir, sauerkraut, miso. Number 4 is alkalis. Cancer cannot thrive in an alkaline environment. So how do we alkalize? Well, notice what Dr. Tullio Simoncini was doing. He was injecting sodium bicarbonate straight into the cancer. Well, we're not doctors, so we don't inject in. But a Canadian doctor shared a recipe with me of how to wrap the whole body in sodium bicarbonate infused hot towels. And this is 5 litres of hot water, 2 kilos of sodium bicarbonate and the juice of a lemon. And we would dip a towel in, wring it out, wrap it around the torso, cover it with a woolen blanket. Dip the next towel, wring it out, cover a leg, and then put a garbage bag on that, and that keeps it hot. Then the other leg, then the arm, other arm, and then you wrap the whole body in a woolen blanket. No polyester blankets. Someone has made a fortune out of polyester. Polyester is a nasty chemical. Polyester, nylon, and acrylic are fabrics that were created in a chemical laboratory. So Jacqueline and I, we're in a different place every week, and we're shocked at the amount of houses that all have these polyester blankets. Ugh. Have you touched it? It's not very nice. Some people say, yeah, but the wool is prickly. Yeah, but you don't have it on you. You have a sheet there. But I don't think in Florida you probably ever have the need for a woolen blanket. A little, sometimes. But when doing this treatment, it must be a woolen blanket. Woolen insulates. If you Google my name, Barbara O'Neill, and sodium bicarbonate wraps, there is a demonstration there. When I was in Invercargill, New Zealand, about 2015, I think it was, an Indian doctor asked me to come and give meetings. This is before I was banned, and this is before I was famous. I didn't get banned till I became, anyway, it all came hand in hand. And he asked if I would demonstrate, and I said, I hesitate because it's a very specialised treatment. He said, please. So his wife, who's a nursing instructor, she helped me because you need a couple of attendants, and his 15-year-old son agreed to be wrapped up. So you can Google my name and you will see a demonstration of it. I've come under a lot of flack from this of this little clip. And I remember when I was at the Inquisition, I mean the tribunal, where I was being questioned, they said, why did you put that up on YouTube? I said, I didn't even know it was there. And it is true. In fact, it was about a year later, a lady said to me, oh, we're doing the wraps. I said, how do you know how to do the wraps? She said, it's up on YouTube. I said, what? Now, I don't mind the information going out because I don't see it as my information. I see it as God's information. And this information is for everyone, everyone. Because Jesus said in John 10:10, I have come that they might have life and that they might have life more abundantly. That's his aim for us. My only concern is that it be done properly. But they were very frustrated in the tribunal because they could not find any statement where I claimed that it cured cancer. See, there's only one thing that can cure cancer, and that's the human body. The human body, when it's given the right conditions, and this is part of the conditions to give the body to create an environment where cancer cannot survive. So one way to alkalize is the sodium bicarbonate wraps. Then the question is asked, well, couldn't you just put 2 kilos in a hot bath? Well, if you'll notice, it all sinks to the bottom. So you'll have to be constantly moving. And the beauty of the hot towels is the steam from the hot towels takes the sodium bicarbonate into the skin. So it goes in through the skin with the hot, moist towels, the pores open and it's taken in, helps to alkalize the tissues. What if you drink it? All you'll do is neutralize your stomach acid. So how can you alkalize the tissues? You can take green drinks. And in my book, Self-Heal by Design, there's a recipe for the great green drink. Now, it's easy where we live at Misty Mountain. It's all green and we've got a big garden. And we got lots of weeds and pumpkins and things growing, and we gather 4 different wild greens, blend them with water. One of them is always mint because then it tastes a bit better. Blend them with water, strain them, and then you got green water. And our guests drink maybe 3 or 4 glasses of that a day. And that green drink is basically chlorophyll, which is plant blood. This is human blood. So the molecular structure of human blood looks like this. This is plant blood, which is, of course, chlorophyll. And it looks very, very similar, almost identical, but there's one difference. The middle molecule in human blood is iron, and the middle molecule in plant blood is magnesium. So it's very, very similar. And that's why those green drinks are one of the best blood and tissue cleansers. But because the green chlorophyll is very high in alkaline minerals, so it has a very alkalizing effect on blood and so tissues. Now, if you don't have lots of greens like we have, you can buy barley green powders and mix them with a little water maybe 3 times a day. You can get super greens, you can buy chlorophyll. So there's a lot of green powders that you can buy. Looking at how to alkalize, oxygen alkalizes, and you can see by when the cells have enough oxygen to get down to there, look how much energy that's going to give. The oxygen alkalizes. So at our retreat, we have hyperbaric chamber. And the hyperbaric chambers, hyper-B chambers, they were developed to help divers, deep sea divers that get bends. You see, when we're breathing in air, air is 79% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. And when the divers come up too quick, the nitrogen can't be dispersed, and so it's caught in little bubbles in joints and muscle, and that's the pain. And Henry's law states that under pressure, more gas goes into liquid. And that's what the hyperbaric chamber does. It puts pure oxygen under pressure into this chamber, so it causes the gas, which is oxygen, to go into the liquids, into our blood, and so it ups the oxygen content. Remember what I said earlier, cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. So this can be a treatment contributing to a condition that cancer can't survive. So it was first set up for divers with bends, but what they're finding is it's helping with diabetics who've got slow wound healing. You see, we have 100 trillion cells in the body, and 75 trillion are as I have drawn here. So the other 25 trillion is red blood cells. And those red blood cells are the carriers of oxygen. They're the carriers of nutrients. They're the carriers of water to what we call the CBD, the central business district of the human body, the inside workings of the cell. So what if you don't have a hyperbaric chamber? Now, there is a health retreat in Eden Valley, Colorado, or it's in Colorado. It's called Eden Valley, and I I used to go there every year, and they have implemented a lot of our principles that we use, and they have several hyperbaric chambers. In fact, I think they do a cancer program every month. And part of their cancer program is the hyperbaric chamber. They also do fever baths. And creating a fever in the body gets the temperature up, and when the temperature gets up, that boosts the bone marrow to make more red and white blood cells. And you know, that's our internal army. I think it's tomorrow night we're looking at the immune system. And also, when you rise temperature, it is that high heat kills pathogenic organisms. So that's why the fever is so effective in cancer treatments. In fact, the fever treatments have been used to help treat cancer for many years. That little video clip that came on, have you heard of Battle Creek Sanitarium? Battle Creek Sanitarium was in Michigan, and it was a health retreat that had 1,000 beds in the mid-1800s. People from all over the world came to this retreat. Isn't it fascinating? And the medical director was Dr. Kellogg. Yeah, Dr. Kellogg. And I was reading the autobiography of a Dr. Brown, and she was Scottish, and I have a Scottish mum, and she gave me the book to read because I was interested in the history. And this Dr. Brown, she worked with Dr. Kellogg for about 6 years. She said Dr. Kellogg was an excellent surgeon, but he rarely used surgery. Wouldn't that be wonderful to hear of a place that had doctors like that today? What would he use? He would use the physiotherapist. He would use water treatments. He would use herbal treatments. And when I was being interviewed, I think it was a year ago, by Dr. Mallock, Doc Mallock, his name is, and he's an orthopedic surgeon, and he refused to take the shot. So no operating theatre would allow him to work. This was, I think, in 2021. So he started doing podcasts, but he said before he stopped practicing, he said he got to the point where he was starting to educate his patients on nutrition, on lifestyle. And he said it got to the point that he was only doing 5% operations on his patients. He said, most of my colleagues, it's 50%. He said, I would get the physiotherapist in. I would show them how to build up their bodies, build up their muscles, so operations weren't necessary. Isn't that interesting? He said he had a lady come in one day and she said, oh, can't you just operate? I was sitting on the plane one day next to a man who had a suit on, and he had a book, and the book was the effect of nutrition on the cell. So I said to him, that looks an interesting book. He said, who are you? I said, I'm Barbara O'Neill. Who are you? He said, I'm Dr. Kennedy. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I said, well, I'm very pleased to see that the orthopedic surgeon is looking at the effect of nutrition on the cell. He said. Anyway, we got talking. I wasn't well known in those days. He said, most of the operations I do are unnecessary. So it was actually in line with Dr. Kellogg. He was an excellent surgeon, but he didn't do a lot of operations. I acknowledge in some cases it may be necessary, but let's explore everything else possible before we have to resort to that. So I was very pleased to be interviewed by Doc Mallock, because that's what he was looking at. He was looking at the nutritional status of the human body. He was looking at hydration. He was looking at strengthening the muscles. We live in an incredible body that's got an ability to adapt and adjust whenever there's an injury. Because isn't it incredible? People have their gallbladders out and they still live. People have half of their colon out and they still live. People have their appendix taken out and they still live. Ideally, we don't have them out, but if they have to be taken out, we've got a body that can adapt and adjust to that. So if you don't have a hyperbaric chamber and you can't have access to a hyperbaric chamber, you can increase the oxygen contents at the cellular level. And at the cellular level, you first of all increase it at blood level because the blood is carrying the oxygen there by breathing always through the nose. In Genesis 2 verse 7, the Bible says, God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. He became a living soul. Did you get where God breathed? It wasn't mouth to mouth. It was nose. And the science shows that nose purifies the air, it humidifies the air, it warms the air, it balances blood gases, and it pressurizes the air, making it perfect for the lungs. When you breathe through your nose, you will get 18% more oxygen at the cellular level. So breathing through the nose, we should be breathing nose and abdominal. So we should be abdominal breathers. The body was designed to breathe with the abdominal muscles. So many people have become high chest breathers because sometimes it's because of their posture. When you strengthen your abdominal muscles, all of those muscles are connected to the spine. It causes the body to stand upright. One lady said, my abdominal muscles are long gone. I said, will you be standing like this? It's our abdominal muscles that cause us to stand upright. So please strengthen your abdominal muscles, which will actually strengthen your spine, and that will allow you to stand upright so that you're using your abdominal muscles in the breathing process, and always in and out through the nose. But you don't know what you're doing when you're sleeping. Well, you can buy mouth tape, and you can tape your mouth up at night. Now, you don't have to be like my granddaughter Sophia. She visited last April. She was with me for the week and she had a cold. And she said, Nana, have you got some tape? I've got to tape my mouth up. I've got a cold. She said, just get me masking tape. So I gave her masking tape and I put her to sleep and she's there with her mouth taped up, slept all night. She's discovered that the quickest way to clear the nose is to block up the mouth. You won't die. What happens is the more you breathe through your nose, the more it opens the little canals at the back of your nose. So you can be a little bit more civilized than my granddaughter, Sophia, who's the daughter of my son, Peter, who's taught her this, is you can get some tape and just put it underneath your nose to your chin, and you can wear it for an hour a day, and then after a week, you can wear it all night. Because if you go with it tonight, you might wake up in the middle of the night with a start because your mouth's all taped up. But what that will do is that will train your body to nose breathe, and you will get more oxygen. So that's a simple thing that you can do. I'm all about simple things that we can do for ourselves. A lady attended our program. She said to me, 20 years ago, I had breast cancer. She said, I was in the hospital. I was shocked with what I'd just been told. I didn't like what they were telling me. I didn't like they were offering chemo, radiotherapy, and then surgery. She said, I was just reeling with the news, and a delivery boy came in and she said, can I get a lift out with you? She left. And a friend of hers had a little house by the beach, and it was the winter time, so no one was really staying there. So she stayed there, and she'd heard about castor oil compresses. Castor oil penetrates very deep, deeper than any other oil, and it can break up lumps, bumps, congestions, adhesions, tumours. And so she said, I wore this castor oil compress on my breast 24/7. She said, I only took it off when I'd lie in the sun and let the sun, in a little private part of her house, sun go on the breast. Not till it burnt. Of course, there's a bit of common sense there. She said, I'd walk on the beach every day, getting that beautiful fresh air. She said, I'd dive in the sea. And she said, and I asked God to bring to my mind anybody I needed to forgive. And the emotional aspect of disease, of cancer, is very much there. In some people, I find it a major part, and in other people, I find it a minor part. In some people, I find exposure to mold a major part, but in other people with cancer, I don't find it hardly any at all. Remember what I said, I have learnt never to be absolute, because every case is a little different. She said that was 20 years ago. She said after 5 months, I noticed that the lump had gone right down. I went and had a blood test, and she said, and I was cancer-free. I don't ever suggest a mammogram. One lady, she described what a mammogram's like. She said a lady takes her top off, she lies on the highway, and she lets a semi-trailer run over her breast. That's almost what a mammogram's doing. It compresses the breast. And while it's compressed and the tissues are being damaged, then the radio waves go through it. No, I do not suggest that. Dr. Lorraine Day in the 1980s was an orthopedic surgeon from San Francisco Hospital. She had breast cancer, and she conquered her breast cancer naturally, doing a lot of juices. But she had in her book, you can still Google her, she's only just passed. We didn't hear from her for years. And then in 2021, she came out with a very loud voice against what was happening in the nation at the moment. And I'll let you come to the conclusion of what she was speaking against. Because if I mention the name, this might be taken off YouTube. Incredible, isn't it? And yet all the scams that are about me are put up, and they're not taken down. I'm so glad that Robert Kennedy Jr. is making some stands in a few areas. We might see some changes. But Dr. Lorraine Day, she had a few, and you could possibly maybe even still find them on podcasts. One was called Cancer Doesn't Scare Me Anymore, and the other one was You Can't Improve on God. And she had the statistics in there of how many mammograms actually contribute to breast cancer because of the continual damage that they are doing. So I have seen many ladies conquer their breast cancer by balancing the hormones with the wild yam cream, by implementing this simple, these simple guidelines, and by applying the castrol compresses, such simple treatments. So we had a lady attend our program. Her name was Elizabeth Cott, and this was probably 8 years ago now. And she had 3 large tumours in her abdomen. At the time, I think she was late 60s. And her doctor said to her, you have to do chemo immediately. But she didn't like the sound of it. She didn't like the side effects. And remember, it is our God-given right to choose what we do to our body. Don't let anyone pressure. And remember 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, God said, I've not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. A sound mind considers all the options. So she decided to come to Misty Mountain Health Retreat. And when she came, we immediately implemented this program. We did, I think, 5 sodium bicarb wraps in the week. She had green drinks every day. We put her on a diet that was high fiber, generous proteins, and great fats. Lots of vegetables, no limit on the vegetables. Lots of legumes, so many different legumes, so you can have such a variety. And some nuts and seeds every meal. I said to one man, how do you find the diet? He said, I love it, I'm alive. You see, on this cancer-conquering diet, there's no fruit for 6 weeks, no sweetener at all for 6 weeks. One lady said, but Barbara, God made fruit good. I said, he made fruit very good. But fruit is high in fiber, high in sugars, low in minerals, whereas vegetables are high in fiber, high in minerals and low in sugars. It's just for 6 weeks. It's not forever. And as one writer said, it's designed to give a sledgehammer effect to cancer cells. Remember, cancer cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. So it's just an initial. And this is what she did. She took a different herb every week. She started to apply castor oil compresses to the tumours. She went back to the doctor 3 months later and he said, just keep doing what you're doing. All her cancer markers had come down. All her inflammatory markers came down. She went back 6 months later. So this is almost a year from her initial diagnosis, and the doctor said, I can't understand what's happening, but one of your tumours has gone. She went and visited him, I think, every 6 months. Every 6 months, she was looking stronger. She was looking great. Another tumour had gone. He can't understand what's happening to her. She said to me, I have never felt so good. She said, I'm in my 70s now and I feel better than I felt in my 40s. But when she heard the link between cancer and fungus, we couldn't find cancer in her body, fungus in her body, and she was Polish. Her house was spotlessly clean, so no exposure there. But she told me she was the dessert maker at church. She went to a Polish church. She said, I used to make a pavlova. I don't know if you know what a pavlova is, but it's like a meringue. And she'd beat up egg whites and sugar, and I think bake it, and then you put cream and fruit on top, something like that. In Australia, they call it a pavlova. She said, I used to make pavlovas about this big, and I would put 16 cups of white sugar. Think of that next time someone offers you a slice. She said, I believe, she said, because I've never drunk, I've never smoked, but she said, I'm a clean freak and every cleaning product in my home is strong chemicals. So the chemicals were a factor, and she said, and the sugar, that was another factor. And that's why it's important to look at the history, because when you look at the history, you start to see some links that possibly could come together to cause this. When I was at the the tribunal, they claimed that Elizabeth Cott was a fictitious person. She said, give them my phone number. I said to her a few months later, I said, did they ever call you? She said, no, they did not. See, it's as if they're not interested in truth. And when we'd finished the tribunal and my husband was talking to the lawyer, she said, I can't believe it, they've got nothing on her. Now this lawyer, she sits through these tribunals all the time. See, the Healthcare Complaints Commission was set up for doctors who are getting too many deaths, for doctors or practitioners who are not doing right by their patients. But unfortunately, it's being used today to actually take down people like me who've actually done nothing wrong. The lawyer said, I can't believe it. They've got nothing on her. They've gone through everything she said and they can't find anything. And Michael said, does that mean she'll get off? And the lawyer said, no, she'll get a life ban, but she won't go to prison, because if she was guilty, she'd go to prison. What sort of justice is that? And my husband said to me, well, he said, you've got a choice. We can take this to court, but I didn't like the sound of that. I don't really want to stand in the box and get drilled. And we found out it would start with $500,000 and 6 months later another $500,000, and we might never win anything. Or I could retire, and I'm retirement age. Or he said, you can go overseas. I said, I'll go overseas. I said, I've never had so much information in my brain. I have never had so much experience, and I still feel great. And so that's what he did. That's what he did. And so I've been traveling for 9 months of the year on average. This is my 5th year. And in 2021, I was in Germany at a conference, and a lady said to me, I'm so sorry to say this, Barbara, we're so glad you were banned because it's freed you to come to us. And that's when the light bulb went off. This morning I shared with you Psalm 146 verse 3 that says, "Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help." You might go there for an opinion, you might go there for an advice, but that's what it is. And what can you do with that advice? Thank you so much for your opinion. I'm going to seriously consider this. Don't argue with them. Don't say no, because the stress, and you don't want stress. I'm going to seriously consider this. Thank you so much. Because they've just given you the best they know. And then you go home and you weigh up the pros and cons. And then you decide what you want for your body. But in verse 9, it says, the ways of the wicked God can turn upside down. And isn't that true? This thing's bigger than us. Yeah. There's a great God who is overseeing all of this. And so when I was at a conference in Los Angeles last November, one of the other speakers was a cancer survivor, and she gave me her book that tells the story of her cancer journey. She got breast cancer, and when she found out, she was shocked, as of course anyone is, and they said, "Quick, we can start you tomorrow." Don't let anyone rush you into it, because this didn't rise overnight. You've got time to think. So she said, yeah, sure, of course. And all her family said, yes, of course. And when she went into that chemotherapy clinic, she said it was one of the most depressing places she's been in. And so she had to take a tablet, the chemotherapy tablet. She said she started to vomit. She started to get diarrhea. Within a month, she was having diarrhea and vomiting 37 times a day. She said her hair started to fall out. She's 45. She said that she was constantly nauseous. She couldn't eat anything. She was getting thinner and thinner, and they knew they had to get nutrition into her, and they couldn't find any veins. And her arms were bruised with them trying to find it. And then she could hardly walk because it felt like she was walking on razor blades. It's called peripheral neuropathy, one of the side effects of chemotherapy. This woman got thinner and thinner, and every day took the tablet. Do you know, it's important to listen to the body. What was her body saying to her? She started to think it would be much better to be dead than alive. And as I'm reading this, I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling anger. And I thought, I'm not reading about torture in the concentration camps. This is in medical facilities. And I wonder, how often do the nurses and the doctors start to question what they're doing? But the trust is so great that the tablet kept coming in. And after 3 months, they tested, they gave a scan, and they found that no difference in the cancer. And still the tablet came. And then a friend visited and said, I understand what you're going to, but I want to tell you that I conquered my cancer naturally. And when she left, this girl decided to investigate. She started to Google. She didn't want to go off on any mad tangents. And she found quite a few people that had conquered their cancer naturally. And she looked for some common denominators. She looked for some supplements, some common denominators. And the common denominator she found was organic food, juicing. See, when someone can hardly eat, the juices can give nourishment. It cleanses the tissues. And she made a decision not to take the tablet anymore, but she didn't tell anyone. She said, I didn't even tell my husband, because I knew that he would get angry, because he wants her to live, so he wants her to take the tablet because he trusted the princess. After a month, she was no longer nauseous. The diarrhea and vomiting had stopped. No one knew she was hiding the tablet. Her hair started to grow. She had to try and walk. She's in a wheelchair because remember, it's like she was walking on razor blades. So she went to physiotherapist. First day, she took 2 steps. She could not bear the pain anymore. The second day, 3 steps. The 4th day, 4 steps. Even though she was no longer on the chemotherapy, the effects were still in her body. But at least the diarrhea and vomiting had stopped, and she was having only organic food. She was supplementing with juices, and the body started to build up. After 3 months, she was able to walk for about 5 minutes. Her body was starting to put on weight, and her hair was starting to grow. And after 6 months, they did a test, and the cancers were shrinking. Then she told her husband. It was very, very hard not to tell him, but I know. And that's what many people have found me. They've come to our retreat. I'm going to do it naturally. They go home and they get so much pressure from their family because the family love them. They don't want to lose them, and they don't know any other way. Because that's what we're taught from children, to totally trust the princes, the authorities in the field. But there is another way, and that other way is working with the healing powers of the body. When I saw this woman, it was a couple of years later, she's late 40s now, very beautiful looking woman, had her beautiful hair. She totally conquered her cancer. It's an incredible story. And she did not realize it, but she basically was doing this. And as I said to you, I've got many books, I've seen many documentaries on it, and these are the common denominators. Now, there are tangents. There's apricot seed kernels that are known to have an enzyme that kills cancer. There's vitamin C, high doses. There's asiac there's a whole lot. There's black seed oil. There's a whole lot. And a lot of people get very confused. So what I suggest is go to the basic protocol and try grapefruits. So try the apricot kernel seed for a month. Try the IV vitamin C. So you can try different things. They certainly will not hurt, and they quite possibly could contribute to conquering cancer. When people come to our retreat with cancer, I say we see 3 outcomes. Number 1, we see people conquer cancer. Number 2, we see 6 months go to 6 years. Because sometimes people come to us and they've been through a lot of chemo, they've been through a lot of poisoning in their body. But when given, and if someone is ever given 6 months, you know what one lady told me? Her doctor said, "You've got 6 months." She said, "You're not God." Only God knows how much I've got. So if anyone's been given that sentence, please reject it immediately. Because only God knows. So we've seen 6 months go to 6 years, and sometimes we've seen the last days made more comfortable. So at whatever stage, it's always a plus to implement the simple natural treatments. In my book, Self-Heal by Design, I have the cancer conquering program that shows 6 weeks with no fruit, and then antifungal stage 1 program, where it's very low fruits, very low glycemic index, and that's usually for a couple of months. And then the antifungal stage 2 diet, where it's your maintenance dose. So the maintenance dose is basically the dietary program you stay on until you get the all clear. So I'd like to now go over to questions. I think we have a pile. And if your questions aren't answered today, we've got tomorrow too. If the body is insulin resistant, are supplements less effective? I think we're doing diabetes. Not sure whether it's tomorrow or the next day. And it's tomorrow? Thursday. You will see that you can reverse insulin resistance within a week. Isn't that interesting? High intensity interval training causes more insulin receptor sites to be built and getting the glycemic index or the carbohydrates right down. Can be with the trampoline, but as long as you get that high intensity, that's what causes more insulin receptor sites to grow on the cell. The best way to eliminate candida that is causing itchy skin. If ever the skin gets itches, never scratch. Well, what will kill the itch is ice. Just put ice on it. But in my book, Self-Heal by Design, there's antifungal diet stage 1, and I would go on that. That will conquer candida in the body. Do you recommend apricot seeds? Yes, we just talked about that as a prevention for recurrence of breast cancer. 7 years later, that's great news to hear. If anyone's had breast cancer, it is vital that they go on the hormone balancing cream. And I think I'm talking on hormones tomorrow. If you're unable to be here tomorrow, it is covered in my book, Sustain Me. Apricot seeds certainly can be. Do you know the Hunzers eat them every day? They don't have any cancer. And what the apricot seeds have in it is nitriliside or vitamin B17. And by vitamin B17, when it connects with the pancreatic enzymes, it releases cyanide, and cyanide kills the cancer cells. Doesn't kill the healthy cell, because in the healthy cell, there's an enzyme called rhodasase that negates the cyanide. That's how it works. What are your thoughts on Botox? Nasty stuff. Nasty stuff. Don't touch it. What are your thoughts on a colonoscopy? Do you know the mixture that they give you before the colonoscopy just about creates irritable bowel? It is so toxic. No, I don't suggest colonoscopies, and I certainly don't have colonoscopies. I don't believe there is a need. If you are listening to the body and giving the body the right conditions, there is no need for such tests. After knee surgery, I have fluids that make it hard to move in the leg. It blocks the muscle to move leg. What should I do? What I would suggest is to sleep every night with a castor oil compress on the knee, and also rebound. Now, the knee will tell you how much rebounding to do. So this is the health bounce. You just start with the health bounce. That's all you do. The feet don't even, and if the knee's happy with that, just do that. That's enough to move the lymphatic fluid, because the fluid is lymphatic fluid. And if ever the knee gets swollen or sore, you must immediately put it up. You've got to listen to the knee. The knee will tell you what you can and you can't do. What type of water is the best? Rainwater is very good water, but of course, if you're near a factory, sometimes the rainwater is not great, but you can get reverse osmosis filter. The reverse osmosis filters out the fluoride. Hopefully, Robert Kennedy Jr. can get all fluoride out of your water, which he has promised to do. For someone with C, all right, how long will it take the body to heal? Expectations. I understand. We are all different. That's right, we are all different. And it's very difficult to say. It all depends how old the person is, depends how diligent they are to do what you've got to do, and also depends how advanced it is. Do you have any treatments for myeloma, lymphoma, blood cancer? Basically, what we've looked at tonight, this protocol will help to conquer no matter what cancer. I feel like I always have to clear my throat, like I've got phlegm, I'm not sick. What can I do to get rid of that? I went to ENT and they said they couldn't find anything. And that's true. But what I find is if there's excess mucus in the eustachian tubes, and that's one of the reasons why people become mouth breathers, because of the excess mucus. Excess mucus is usually a result of allergy. It can be an allergy to breathing in chemicals, can be an allergy because of breathing in molds, it can be an allergy to foods. And the most common allergens are dairy, wheat, oats, peanuts, and refined sugar. My suggestion is to stop those foods for 2 months, because even though you eat a slice of bread, it'll be out of your body within 24 hours, the effects can remain for sometimes 2 months. So do that for 2 months and see how the clearing is. Also, oil pulling. That's a teaspoon of coconut oil in the mouth and swish for 10 minutes and then release it out. We call it the plug hole. I think you call it the sinkhole. Don't put it down there because the coconut will go hard and it'll block up your plumbing. Release it out on the grass or in the bin. You call it a trash can. Yeah. And then rinse your mouth out, and that can be very good at pulling excess mucus out of the eustachian tubes. Can the body detox from 2 COVID shots? Very difficult because the COVID shot has their mRNA, which means it continually is reproducing that spike protein that causes the nanoparticles. Now, I make it sound simple, but it's incredibly complex, the process of how that happens in the cell. Dr. Peter McCulloch has a protocol on how to detox from the COVID vaccine. Infrared sauna is steam sauna. What's best to use? They're both good. The steam sauna, I like the steam sauna because we are water 75% down, we're water 85% up. So because we're high water creatures, the steam sauna is very effective at causing big sweating, and that perspiration takes away a lot of waste. But the infrared are quite good. I have history of ovarian cancer. My gynecologist monitors my blood levels every 3 months. They go up and down. What do I recommend? Because it's been ovarian, very important to balance the hormones, because it's the high estrogen that's causing these growths. Is there a holistic remedy for skin cancer? Will biopsies make it spread? Yes. I do not advise biopsies. Biopsies damage the tissues, which can cause the spreading of the cancer. In my book, Sustain Me, I've got a chapter on the skin, and I show that there's a quick way to get rid of skin cancers, and that's cansema or black salve. And that black ointment can be applied to the cancer. You'd cover it with tape, leave it 24 hours, take it off, and if it's positive, it'll be all red and pussy. It'll look terrible, but that's all right. That's just doing an operation there. And after 10 days, it shrinks up and then often falls out. That's the quick way. A slower way is put 1 drop of oregano oil on it every day, and it might take 3 months, but it will burn it out. And a real slow way is to apply castor oil every day, a couple of times a day, and that might take 6 months. So there's a quick way and a medium way and a slow way. And what about skin tags? You can put a dab of castor oil on every day. Can you dissolve bumps from arthritis on fingers? I have seen that happen, and it's castor oil. Castor oil breaks down, but it's, again, consistency is the key. Might take quite a few months. How to balance cortisol levels? How do you know they're high? Blood test. Well, don't have a blood test, then you won't know. And remember, blood tests are not always accurate because, you know, a lot depends on what's happening in your body that day that you have the blood test. How to heal nut and bean and legume allergy. Well, you can take the tiniest little bit and see what your body, if your body still reacts, don't touch it. And then after a couple of months, try again, the tiniest little bit. And you just, every day you increase it a tiny bit more and a little bit more, and you can often get your body used to that. What's the protocol for pancreatic cancer? Basically using this same protocol, castor oil compresses can be applied to the pancreas, which is on your left side, your liver's on your right side. And digestive enzymes are necessary because remember what we saw this morning, the pancreas finalizes digestion. How to get off Synthroid. I have met people who have stopped their thyroid medication, but before they do, they must implement the principles that I cover in my book, Sustain Me. I have got a whole chapter on the thyroid. And one of them is balancing the hormones because high estrogen opposes thyroid function. So balancing the hormones is important. And in my book, I list all the things that you can do to get better thyroid function. And once they're implemented, it might take a couple of months, and then you might consider slowly reducing the medication. And it might begin by taking it every second day for maybe a month. See how your body's responding to that. Then take it every third day for another month. See how the body responds to that. So little by little, ease off it. How to use and what benefits does oregano have? I don't take oregano oil every day. I took it a week ago for a day because I had a sore throat. And it's antifungal, antibacterial, and a person might use it as part of the protocol of the herbs to kill off candida or cancer in the body. How do you start the day? First thing I do when I wake up in the morning is have a big drink of water, and then I pray and ask for wisdom for the day. I've got a lot of children and grandchildren to pray for, and I always read the Bible, and I exercise. I slept in a bit this morning. I slept in till 6:15. That's a very big sleep in for me. So I didn't have time to go for a walk, so I did 20 push-ups and 15 squats. Yes, did a whole lot of those things for my exercise, but I always do some sort of exercise in the morning. What are the best oil supplements to take, etc.? I don't take any supplements, but on my simple needs bread, I have about a teaspoon of olive oil and then cayenne pepper and then avocado, and then on top of that, either scrambled tofu or red lentils. That's what I have most mornings. And some fruit and nuts and seeds. Any advice for healing the body after cancer and radiation, lymphedema? With lymphedema, it's very important to get on the rebounder. And lymphedema is usually a result of them removing the lymph nodes, because the lymph nodes are what actually process the lymphatic fluid. But when they're gone, if it's under the arm can really swell up, which is unfortunate. The body will naturally detox once you give it the right nutrition, go to bed early, drink adequate water, exercise every day, and the green drinks. Remember, the green drinks are excellent blood and tissue cleansers. Causes of lymphomas. There's a few theories of lymphomas, which are like fatty lumps that develop on the arms, on the body. And some theory is that it's fat. The fat is storing environmental poisons, so exposure to chemicals. And when we go through the liver detox tomorrow, I'll be showing you how the fat cells are where our environmental poisons are stored. I've known people to have the lipidemas cut out, but then they grow again. But applying castor oil compresses every night can quite possibly help to break them down. What are your thoughts on fenbendap, ivermectin for battling cancer. I don't agree with drug therapy and I don't use drug therapy, but I do know there's been information of how that has helped, but it is something that I've never used. My aunt was recently diagnosed with scleroderma. Can this be cured naturally? Well, I can tell you right now, it cannot be cured medically. Her hands become purple in the cold and they told her her organs are failing. Don't believe that. The best thing to do is to reject that. That's their opinion. But if the hands go purple, it means that the blood circulation's not effective there. So make sure the person exercises. Make sure you always keep your body warm. And scleroderma, it's often a buildup of scar tissue. That's where castor oil can help to break that down. I had breast cancer, estrogen positive last summer. Had a lumpectomy, radiation. Now I'm on tamoxifen for 5 years. Do you recommend fasting for this? Anything else I can do? I've got some good news. There is an alternative for tamoxifen, and that is red clover. Tamoxifen has side effects. Red clover does not. So if I was that person, I would immediately stop the tamoxifen. And a lot of people don't stop it because they've been told if they stop it, they'll get breast cancer. Well, remember, it's not necessarily so. That's their opinion and it's not always correct. So to prevent breast cancer coming back, balance the hormones with the wild yam cream for at least a year and take red clover tablets 3 times a day. When hair falls a lot, this is very tiny writing. Doctor prescribed me vitamin D and B12, but it keeps falling. I lose around 150 hairs a day. Have you counted them? New hair grows, but it did not prevent the falling. Well, as long as there's new hair growing, and in my book, Sustain Me, there's a chapter on hair loss, and there are different things that you can do. And one is, sometimes it is a hormonal imbalance. And there are some essential oil rubs that you can rub into your scalp, but that's in my book, Sustain Me. Do apricot seeds help fight cancer and or inflammation? They do. What do puffing under eyes signify and how was your remedy? It can indicate there's an allergy. It can indicate dehydration. There can be a few things. Sometimes it's the kidneys that aren't happy. Kidneys are never happy if you're not drinking adequate water. And a lot of Americans don't drink enough water and drink too much sodas and coffees. And that can certainly contribute to the puffy eyes. Chronic fatigue. There's a #1 cause of chronic fatigue is lack of oxygen at the cellular level. We have 75 trillion cells, and if every cell, every one of those cells have enough oxygen to give us that, goodbye to chronic fatigue. Now, there can be a whole lot of reasons why there's lack of oxygen at the cellular level. I touched on it in the first lecture today. If your digestion's not working well and you're not able to access the nutrients in your food, that can contribute. Breathing always through the mouth, breathing in stale air, not exercising, all can contribute to it. Breathing through the nose and exercising every day will give you more oxygen, and more oxygen is more energy. Sometimes medication can contribute to it, so there can be a whole lot of reasons for chronic fatigue syndrome. Bedwetting to a 12-year-old boy and attention deficit syndrome, hyperactivity. I have found, and I've helped a few children with bedwetting, that it's best not to make a fuss and they eventually grow out of it. make sure they're drinking adequate water, but most of the water ideally is drunk in the early part of the day. Sometimes just waking them up 2 hours after they've gone to bed and taking them to the bathroom can help getting them into the habit of doing that. Is inflammation the main cause of cancer? Well, then you have to look at, well, why is the inflammation there? Inflammation just doesn't come. Inflammation is there because of other reasons, and inflammation can be a factor, definitely, in cancer. Does your gut powder repair raise blood pressure? No. The gut powder repair, and I think OK Be Healthy, Jacqueline Shop sells gut repair, and it's slippery elm with a little golden seal and myrrh in it, and that can be very good at healing the gut, but I have not known it to raise blood pressure. What can you do for baldness? Well, there is a genetic factor there, but you can certainly slow down baldness by making sure you're eating peak nutrition, ideally organic food, and also exercise. Exercise increases the circulation of the blood to the extremities. That increases the scalp. What can you do for leaking abstinence? Not sure what that means. What can you do for frozen shoulder? It's frozen, you've got to unfreeze it. And hot and cold in the shower can do it. And you just got to move that shoulder, move it little by little. Go to a physiotherapist who'll give exercises how you can wake up that shoulder. Frozen shoulder is usually because you stop using the shoulder. And a lot of people stop using it because it hurts. So it's actually unfreezing it, and it can be unfrozen. Is calcium something to take? Or how can one have optimum calcium intake? Where do the cows get their calcium? Have you seen how big their bones are? They eat grass. Now, I've got some good news. You don't have to eat grass. You can eat green leafy vegetables like kale, like lettuce. I eat greens every main meal. Every main meal, I always have a lot of greens. And if you don't have a lot of greens, you can take green barley. I'd rather eat greens myself. Suggestions for energy supplements and also to eliminate brain fog. One of the main causes of brain fog is allergy to gluten. And the wheat was changed in the 1950s, and it created a protein or gluten structure that's not easy to break down. So going over to simple needs breads, eliminate it for a couple of months and just see how your brain is then. It usually clears. Can malnutrition cause numbness, tingling in the legs and feet? Usually the numbness, tingling in the legs and feet is spine. So you could see an osteopath, chiropractor, and check the spine's all right. And also exercise. Even if there are back injuries, if you strengthen the core muscles, that can help hold that spine into place. I have met 5 men in my travels with serious back injuries who really should be dead, but were sent home on painkillers. And they realized that the future didn't look too good, so they started exercising. They started strengthening the core. And they are now medication-free and pain-free, all because they strengthened their core. And so exercise is vital. My time is up and my questions are answered. And if your question didn't get answered, we've got tomorrow. Thank you.